Well, welcome back to the Reality Halfway House. Today, we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. I've been having some conversations with friends this week about just kind of the chaos and the tumultuousness of life. So we're going to be talking about starting over at the end of the world. What does that look like? We are caught between worlds. This is the Reality Halfway House. I'm your host, Jones Nelson. Thanks so much for tuning in today. So, yeah, we're going to kind of deviate just a little bit today. We tend to focus, or have been tending to focus, kind of more on the esoteric. We've been looking at aliens. We've been looking at portals. Of course, we talked about Fauci last week and his pleading the fifth 111 times. But I've been having some conversations over the last couple of days with friends and colleagues and acquaintances, and it seems like a common theme that I've been running into, and that's really where I feel like the impetus of this show comes from, is people are ultimately extremely stressed, and they're struggling to determine how they're supposed to go through and react. I find myself in this boat quite a bit, and I think that it's a question that a lot of us ask and that we don't get an answer to. You know, because a lot of the things that we grew up learning, you know, over the years with respect to success in life and the pursuit of the pursuit of our dreams and our aspirations, there was always like a blueprint. You know, you're going to go to school, you're going to get a degree, you're going to get a job, you're going to build your career, you're going to climb the ladder, you're going to retire and enjoy your wealth, and then, you know, leave your wealth for your kids, right? That's kind of the idea. You know, and you have the house with the white picket fence and the 2.5 kids and a dog and a cat, you know, I mean, and that was kind of the picture that was painted for success. But now a lot of this has become so unattainable that people are really struggling to even make their ends meet, let alone go through and make any sort of, you know, longer term or, you know, plans for their future. This last weekend, we took the kids out of town just for a one-day trip. I mean, literally with the way everything's going, you know, I mean, vacations are kind of out of the question. We haven't been able to take a vacation in a long time. And it's not that we, you know, live within poverty. It's just everything is so expensive that, you know, you kind of have to prioritize, you know, where you're ultimately going to go through and spend, right? And I'm not going to run up thousands and thousands of dollars worth of credit cards and other things to try to keep up with the Joneses. You know, we're going to, you know, live and do our best to, you know, kind of survive through this time. So we took the kids out of town, and you know, we went to some museums, and we went and did some, you know, video game stuff, you know, for the kids, and, you know, just kind of had a little bit of education, a little bit of brainlessness, and try to have a good weekend. And we were going to go watch the new Spider-Man movie, and I can't remember what it's called. I don't know. It's one of the home movies. Anyway, the brand new one. And it's. I just read a thing actually just before I started the podcast that I think it's broken like all-time box office records for like the weekend. It just beat the Endgame. And it's just, I mean, it's something like $365 million or something, or 165. I don't know. It's a lot of money. They've garnered a lot of money in the opening weekend, and we were going to go and try to watch it while we were out of town, but all the theaters were sold out. So we were just going to say, well, we'll just catch it, you know, locally here in our local theater, and just do that later. Well, we went to go through and buy tickets online, and the whole point of this is to kind of end up where we're hoping to be. So we went through and tried to book the tickets online, and just to keep numbers simple and round, let's say for the four of us, it was going to be $50 for all 4 tickets. Okay. Just making something up. Well, there's taxes. So call it $10, 10%, or so that'd be $5, I guess, $5 for taxes. Right. And then there was an additional $10 convenience fee. So it would have been a total of basically $15 in taxes, or 30%, because the convenience fee is mandatory. I mean, there's no getting around it. Had we purchased online, we'd had to have paid it. So you're paying the 10% tax plus 20% convenience fee. You're paying 30% and effectively a tax to go watch a movie at the theater. 30%. Remember, it was like 2%, 2 or 3%, that caused Americans to throw the tea in the harbor and, kick off the war. 2 to 3%. I forget exactly what it was. And this is 30% just to go watch a movie, right? This is just the movie. This doesn't take into account, our payroll taxes. It doesn't take into account, all the other taxes that we're exposed to. And so people are completely stressed out because it doesn't matter where you're at. You're just hit over and over. Just when we're supposed to be getting relief at the gas pump, right? Strait of Hormuz is open again, right? So it's like the gas prices should be coming down and now they're edging themselves back up again. People are depressed. People are in a state of disillusionment. People are starting to kind of detach for a little bit because after a while, if you just hear no over and over and over, you start to detach. I mean, you can see this with people at work. You can see this with your kids. If you tell them no over a certain period of time, eventually, a long time, eventually they just kind of quit asking, and people just kind of give up. That's why, and I talked a little bit about this in the last episode. That's why the Gen Z. I've worked with a lot of Gen Zs over the years, the last several years in particular. And at first, I just thought, man, these guys are lazy. They're just really lazy because I'm a millennial, but I have real high work ethic, and I'm usually the first person at work or on the job site. I'm just that way, and my parents kind of pushed me in that direction. And so I have a really high standard for myself, and therefore I don't hold other people to my standard, but I really am looking to see a lot people work hard around me. And these guys, they just are lackadaisical. And I just thought they were all lazy. Well, as I've gotten to know them more, and as I've gotten to see kind of and step back a little bit myself, I'm starting to see that they're not lazy so much. Some of them are. I mean, there's lazy people in every generation, but most of them have basically just come to terms with the fact that they're never going to be able to participate the way that we're told we're supposed to be able to participate. And so because of that fact, they're just not going to be able to have that life that, quote unquote, they were promised. They just stop. More and more of them are living at home for longer. More and more of them have roommates and are not having kids. Because, why would you have kids if you're living at home? Why would you have kids if you're, living with 2 or 3 roommates? I mean, people aren't doing it. They're not drinking as much. I think probably part of that is because they can't afford it. But the other part of that is this generation, the Gen Zs, are putting a lot of emphasis on health and mental well-being. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that I missed at the very beginning because I was just looking at one aspect of that particular generation. Meanwhile, my generation is just fried because, again, in our supposedly our top earning years, I mean, everything is so expensive to the point to where, I mean, I saw a post. I was talking at the beginning here about vacation and not wanting to spend thousands of dollars. And so we just have a little weekend kind of a thing. And I saw a post earlier, or last week something, and it said millennials are hearing about this term, this antiquated term called a vacation. And the guy defines it, and he's basically saying it's where you take time away from your work and your job and your friends, and just you go away and you completely detach, where you recharge your batteries. And he's like, well, we need to bring this term back. Well, it's not a matter of bringing it back. It's just that it's become unattainable. We can't do it. And so it really kind of begs that question. It's like, okay, so then what do we do with this? If we can't afford anything and our lives the only way to exist is to get smaller and smaller and smaller. You see this uptick and upsurge of the tiny house movement or people living in their cars. I don't know how my algorithm got me a few months ago, but I just started getting these videos of these people in like Japan, just like living in their little cars. It's like a 3-wheeled vehicle, and they're just living in their cars. And it's just crazy to me that our worlds just keep shrinking down and getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's the only way that we're able to survive. See, and the thing is, I quit my job in corporate at the beginning of the summer because number one, I was burnt out, but number two, I got hosed. I was exceeds expectations, and I met all the boxes. I exceeded their efficiency expectations by 40%. And that was after I slowed down. My boss sent a message to me on the first day. He said, I've been asked to give you some feedback. If you could please slow down. You're going way faster than the rest of the department. I said, well, am I making mistakes? He said, no, but if you'll just please slow down. So, I'd exceeded expectations by 40% with 98 point something accuracy, almost 100% accuracy. And so after that, I got a crappy raise, and then my workload was tripled, and I didn't have the capacity to be. So I took the job. It was a super easy job, but I took the job so that I could then go through and record. I'm in my recording studio right now, and it was great. I could play guitar. I could rehearse for gigs. It worked out to be a really neat opportunity because I'd get all my work done. I was exceeding expectations, so it's like I wasn't going through and taking advantage of them. I was getting all my work down and exceeding, but I still have plenty of time to go through and to work on my stuff as well. You know what I mean? It was like a great deal. It didn't pay a lot, but because I was able to go through and work on studio projects and other things like that, it kind of leveled out, if that makes any sense. Well, then they tripled my workload. There was no additional pay raise, and the raise that they gave me for, exceeding expectations by over 40% was just ridiculous. So I quit that job, and I spent the summer working in construction. And so I did that up until a couple of weeks ago. Well, it turns out the guy that I was working for was kind of a hoser. He never once learned my name. As a matter of fact, he told me one time, he's like, I can never remember your name, so I'm just going to make up a name and call you one. So he just made up a name and started calling me. It's like Austin, or I forget what it was he was calling me. And he was rude, he was abrasive. And then he started messing with my paycheck and started cutting hours. And it's like, gosh, man. So I left that, and I said, you know what? Look, here's the deal. I had long hair. If you look back a couple of episodes, I had long hair. I cut my hair short. I said, look, here's what's going to happen. Much to my chagrin, I'm going to go through and I'm going to try to get back into the workforce with my degree and everything else in a crazy job market, because I've got to figure something out that I'm going to be able to do. The trades are an interesting space, but I don't fit very well within them, within the scope of kind of the day-to-day, because a lot of the folks kind of drive me crazy. Not because there aren't good people out there, but a lot of them I have found, not all, but a lot of them I've found are pretty lazy and pretty inconsistent. There's so many no-call, no-shows. Like this last boss would ask me, he's like, how many hours did you work this week? And I said, 40. I was here the whole time, and he was shorting me on hours and all kinds of stuff, which is why I left. But the fact that they have to ask because people are so inconsistent, and I'm extremely consistent. And it's just this crazy world that I'm finding more and more people in, because people get stuck in these jobs that they hate, and then they won't leave because of the job market and because of everything else. So they just stay, but then it's like their soul and their body rots while they're there. But then you leave, and then it becomes this impossible endeavor in order to get back into the swing of things, right? And I had a conversation with my buddy a couple of days ago, and he was basically telling me that, he's going through some stuff, personally with his family, and I know he's been working on some things job-wise. And the thing is, he's just one example of so many people that I encounter on a regular basis, to where every single day it's like you have to go through and justify your very existence for even being alive. Like, you have to justify why you're doing anything anymore today. And it's bananas to me. It's like we have to get up and say, okay, well, I'm going to live today. And it's like, well, why are you living? The only person that you're ever really supposed to justify yourself to is God. I mean, right? I mean, but now we've got to justify ourselves to our spouse, to our kids, our parents, we got our boss, the government. We have to justify ourselves continually, and it just becomes an exhausting endeavor. And as I get back into the job application, since last week, I've put in 73 applications, 73. And out of 70, it took me 72 before I finally got an email back scheduling an interview, which would require that I move, but with the interest rates and the housing market where it's at, is probably not going to be applicable. But it's within a couple of hours, so it may be a situation where I go over there and live for a little bit and come back on the weekends. I don't know yet. It's a crazy time that we're in, and it begs the question. It's like, what is it that any of us can do? Because our ears are tickled, continually about this notion of an impending event and a reset, whether it's a currency reset or a global reset governmentally. I mean, there's so many different things that we keep hearing, right? Well, you can't get too attached to anything. And it's like people keep saying, well, get your popcorn because we're watching this movie and the credits are fixing to roll. And it's like, dude, do you know how many times I've gone through and have stocked up and waiting for the end of the world, and then it just didn't happen? And then stocked up and then waited for the end of the world and it didn't happen. And it's like you're having to work through all your stuff. Like, I don't know how these long-term preppers do it. They get years and years and years worth of things together only to go through and to have to continually cycle. I don't know how they do it and keeps, the level of record keeping. Maybe there's a simple solution to it. I don't know. But it's just, how do you go through to make any plans whatsoever? How do you go through and make any plans when we're, quote unquote, here at the end of the world, right? And, again, at my age, I'm my early 40s, and at my age, it's like I'm supposed to be in my top income earning potential. I'm supposed to be climbing the top of the ladder, getting to that point to where it's like I can kind of just go through and, put out fires and more or less have kind of an easy-ish kind of a deal. I mean, that was what I was sold. But, I mean, in order to be able to get to that position, from my experience, I mean, you have to engage in some significant compromise. I mean, those people that I've interacted with are just slimy. All of them, all of the managers at that level are just incredibly slimy. And it's like, you don't trust them with anything. And it's like, dude, I'm not going to go through and sacrifice who I am for anything. I'm going to make sure that if I'm going to go through and put my best foot forward, it's going to be, for the betterment of myself, my family, the people that I work with. And I always would tell my boss, much to their chagrin, it's like, I work for God first before I work for this company, and it's like, they always hate to hear that. And it's like, well, why would you even tell them that? Well, I mean, that's who I am, man. I work for God first before I work for this company, and I used to always say, it's like, my soul's not worth a single cent of ill-gotten gain. It's just not. I'm not a perfect dude by any stretch. I don't claim to be. There was some profanity in the last episode. I was pretty fired up. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're just trying to be the best versions of ourselves. And I ran across something. I didn't grab a screenshot, but I did capture the text here, and I just kind of wanted to read it. It's by I found this on Facebook, and I just want to read it. Johnny Dominguez was the username, to give him credit. But I just thought this was interesting because I think a lot of people, not necessarily just my age, but I think kind of in that late 30, early 40s are kind of going through this, kind of this, I guess what you'd call a midlife crisis. But I don't necessarily think it's just that. I think so many people are just really fatigued by just where everything is at, not being able to afford anything, not being able to realize your dreams. Working hard should yield a profit, right? Like, working hard should yield a profit. Whenever I play, and I don't play a lot of video games, but I started playing Call of Duty with my kids. And I would go through, I can't remember if I talked about this in an earlier episode, but I would go through and I would, work on getting the camos for the guns, right? It's a thing that you can do, and you got to do all these crazy challenges, and then you can level up. I didn't really care necessarily about the camos themselves. It was more so just like if I do this and I can accomplish this, I can unlock this. It was scratching an itch that I was not getting in my career. That is to say, I was able to work hard for something, do something hard and challenging, and be able to go through and unlock an achievement that allowed me to be able to go through and find success. Whereas in corporate America, again, I exceeded expectations by 40%. I had almost 100% accuracy. I got a 2% pay bump, and then they tripled my workload with no additional compensation. Tell me that's commiserate. It's ridiculous. Whereas in a video game, which is why people get addicted to them, it's like you can work hard and then you unlock things, and around and around we go. This is the social media that we're in, where you have the continual dopamine hits through scrolling, et cetera, et cetera. And so people are tired of this. I just saw earlier this week, and it's funny, I was ranting and raving about this on my radio show, about how I'm getting sick of, the doom scrolling and everything on Facebook and all that stuff. And it's like, we need to get Tom out of retirement and bring MySpace back. And all this week they've been talking about how they're actually going to, they're really seriously working on bringing a non-algorithmic MySpace back that doesn't have the addictive scrolling. Purportedly. I mean, that's what they're talking about, which I just got the biggest kick out of, because literally I just went on a rant. So of course, next week I'm going to be talking about how, of course they answered my emails and now I'm a consultant with MySpace, et cetera, et cetera. I'm really full of shit. But that's what it's like to be on radio, right? But at the end of the day, it's like we're all in this weird spot, because then what do we do? If you work really hard and you don't get anything out of it, you just get more work. And really the only area where you can work really hard and get something is in like this fake world, this metaverse, this video game environment. It's like, how do you go through and reinvent yourself to get to the point to where you really truly are yielding a profit? Because I see people yielding profit, but the vast majority of them they own their own business. They're doing things like that. And so that's what I've been looking into. It's like, well, how do I transition, and what can I even offer? I've got recording studio. I have a degree in audio engineering. I've been doing, recording for 30 years. But it's like, man, any kid with a laptop can go through and record. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be great. And half the studios out there, I just saw something the other day. A big guy, it's a big studio musician, was out there. He's like, dude, the majority of these big studios, they're all using AI. And it becomes John Henry and the steam engine. It's like, how do you compete with, artificial intelligence when they can go through and churn out, 50 songs or 150 songs, in the amount of time you could do one song. And I'm probably under, stating that, they can probably do more than that. For me to go through and release a song, write it, produce it, do the music video, et cetera, I'm probably looking around 100 hours, for me to put out one song. And that's for me doing everything. Mixing, mastering, writing, producing, shooting the video, the whole deal. And that's probably 100 hours. And in 100 hours, AI could probably do 1,000 songs. Who knows? So we're in a really weird world. And it's like, so then how do you reinvent yourself? So I saw this post by Johnny Dominguez, and he said, I recently learned about something called the starting over theory, and it knocked the wind out of me in the best way. The theory is simple. Every time your life asks you to begin again, in your creativity, your marriage, your career, your identity, it isn't proof that you've failed. It's proof that your soul is evolving faster than your old life can hold. Starting over doesn't mean you've lost the plot. It means you outgrew it. No one tells you this part. No one tells you that the version of you who walked away wasn't the quitter. He was the one brave enough to say, this chapter has nothing left for me, and I'm willing to bet my life on the next one. No one tells you how terrifying it feels when the familiarity collapses, how naked it feels to not know what comes after the ending, how lonely it can be to reinvent when everyone else thinks they already know who you are. But here's where what the starting over theory teaches. Your biggest breakthroughs don't happen in the chapter that's working. They happen in the space between the collapse and the rebirth. The blank page, the quiet room, the moment your ego whispers, don't do it, and your intuition says go. Starting over is spiritual. It's identity alchemy. It's dismantling the version of you who survived so you can become the version of you who thrives. So if you're in your starting over era, if something's ended, if a door closed, if you're grieving a life you thought you wanted, I hope you remember this. Your new life needs space. Your new timeline needs permission. Your new identity needs you to believe he exists before anyone else recognizes him. And he does exist. And I just thought that was interesting because I think so many people are terrified to start over. Like, they're terrified because they get so attached to a life that they think that they need, right? They get attached to stuff. They get attached to houses. They get attached to people in their lives. They get attached to impressing people or keeping up with the Joneses. They get attached to going through and having a social life, that they have to live up to. And now I'm starting to see more and more people that are stepping away from this. I see more and more people saying, you know what, man, we just sold everything and we went and bought a piece of land and, now we're living on an RV. Or we sold everything and we built a little barn dominium. We're living in a big shed that we've converted. But you know what? We're happier than we've ever been, because we got rid of all that crap. I've got all these guitars hanging on the wall behind me, and I've been, doing my best to be a musician my whole life. I've worked so hard. I put out so many songs. I've sung on songs that have been on the radio. I sang background vocals on a song that hit top 10 a couple of years ago. It's like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you're at in the grand scheme of things. It's like I keep fighting for this thing, and yet it seems like it's always out of reach. And so now I'm trying to go through and to kind of reinvent myself a little bit and trying to figure out, kind of where I fit in. And it's unnerving. It's unnerving because, I've held my identity so long. It's like when I cut my hair, a buddy of mine yesterday was telling me, he's like, man, turn around. Now I don't want you to perform for me as much as I did before, like as a musician. It's interesting because it's so much of that identity was tied into that. And I've thought about just walking away from all this stuff and just kind of selling off guitars and studio gear and everything like that, because it's a huge part of who I am and I love it. But at the same token, it's like, am I too attached to the crap? Is that what's holding me? And I think a lot of people are in that spot. A friend of mine, we've had extensive conversations about kind of his personal career development. And I think a lot of his identity is tied up in one particular area, and he's not willing to sacrifice any of that to better himself for additional income or, whatever. He's just not willing to break, which is fine. I mean, everybody has a choice. It was really hard for me to jump from like a corporate finance career and into blue collar. I think my ultimate goal, and after having done that for the summer, is to be able to kind of have an amalgamation of the two, in so much as maybe I can go through and pick up a house and start kind of flipping it on my own versus trying to work for somebody else that's doing it. I don't know yet. We'll see how we'll kind of see how it goes. But it's interesting because right now so many people are in a position to where they don't feel like they can. They don't feel like they have the flexibility to be able to do anything because everything's so expensive. As I'm now applying for all these jobs, I'm kind of stuck. I can't really apply outside because of the interest rate on our house. Our house has got an interest rate that's so low that to even refinance right now, I wouldn't be able to afford it. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's absolutely crazy, the world that we live in right now. So what do we do? What do we do if we're stuck in this position? And again, like I said, it's this weird spot that we're in, because it's like supposedly this quote unquote movie is ending any minute now. And yet I've refilled my popcorn so many times and have refilled my, my shelves so many times. It's like, I don't know if this movie is going to end in my lifetime or it's going to be 300 years from now. Like, nobody knows, right? So we just have to continue to live on as if, tomorrow is coming and it's going to be the same. No man is promised tomorrow, right? So I came across this post by Susan Davis. Let me see if I can make the screen big enough that I can read it here. Hold on. She says she posted a diagram on how to get unstuck. I thought this was kind of interesting and I wanted to share it. It says, number one, see yourself as being part of the process and on a path of continuous growth. It says, number two, embrace and accept contradiction, which is not necessarily easy to do, but you also have to be open to this possibility that things are going to be different from what it is that that you anticipate or that you see. So step number three says, laugh. Imagine for a moment that you're in a comedy, not a tragedy. And that, again, is also not easy to do when you're frustrated. But sometimes, I know just as of recently, it's been hard not to laugh, because you just get to the point where there's nothing else left to do. Number four, change your point of view. Sometimes it's important to just go do something completely different. I tell people on the radio all the time, because I work the drive time shift in the afternoon. I always say, man, if you're having kind of a weird day or a rough day and you just feel like everything is stuck, maybe take the long way home or take a completely different way home. Just like, just start driving. Put your home address in the GPS and just start driving. Just through neighborhoods and just around the place. Like, just start driving. It'll redirect you and get you back home. But sometimes it's really nice because it completely goes through and changes and shakes up your paradigm. Number five, call it out. Anytime you get hooked, identify the emotion for what it is, an emotion, not a fact. And that I know for me is incredibly hard, because you're constantly inundated. It's like you're not good enough. You have this expression called the imposter syndrome. It's like, even though you may be qualified for something, or you may be kind of a viable candidate for something, it's like you can give yourself a zillion different ways in order to talk yourself out of it. Number six, talk to yourself in the third person. It says, what should Susan do right now? And, I saw another post on this the other day, and I thought it was kind of interesting. The guy said he was actually really struggling with negative self-talk. And he said one of the things that he did to break himself of that was that he started referring to himself in the third person. Like, so he would get a negative thought and he would say, hey, well, what's Jones doing right now? What's Jones thinking about right now? Is Jones really an idiot? Is Jones really, like, did Jones really go through and screw up that bad? Or did Jones, he would change the perspective. So instead of it being about him, he's talking about it as if he's another person. And he said what it forced himself to do is it forced him to kind of look at himself through a different lens, but a little bit more objectively. And he said, I was able to kind of disassociate with the negative self-talk, and it helped kind of break this loop that he had been caught in of negative self-talk. And he said that his overall mood, his overall sense of well-being improved just by that one little technique of just referring to himself in the third person. And then number seven, make the next right move. Jack Canfield, I talk about him a lot. He's great. He's one of the co-authors of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And, he's been an author and motivational speaker for years. I just love that guy. I love him to death. He's one of those people that, is on a short list of people that I would just love to meet and shake their hand and say thank you in person. You know what I'm saying? It's just like one of those people that you just ultimately love to just share some gratitude. But he's always said that the universe rewards action. You know, you can go through and make plans. You can go through and fix your negative self-talk. You can go through and really take every sort of precaution and map things out. But unless you actually go through and put your money where your mouth is and take that action, you're really not going to ever move yourself forward. And it's kind of like going to the gym. You know, a lot of people want to have that big, svelte, strong body, but people don't want to take the small steps to going through and navigating themselves towards that destination, because you're not going to get there overnight. So what can you do today? Like, what small step can you do today to be able to get you there? Maybe your small step today is just getting to the gym. Go sign up for a membership. Maybe your next step is to commit to going 1 day a week. Or, you know, maybe it's to join a class. Maybe you need some accountability. Maybe you and a friend join so you have an accountability. Whatever that looks like for you, it's different for everybody. Are you looking to learn an instrument? Are you looking to go through and to learn a new language, get a new job? You know, maybe that first step is scary, the thought about quitting your job. Maybe it's just getting your resume together, right? Maybe it's refreshing that. Maybe it's just starting to look. I mean, there's so many different things, but I think it's so easy for people to get stuck, and they're not willing to get unstuck. The other aspect is, I think a lot of people too. I think a lot of people are unwilling to move. I'm trying to get my screen back. I don't know what it did before. Oh, there it goes. They're unwilling to move. It's like, oh man, moving is such a hassle. Like I can't. Like, I'd have to pack up all this or get rid of all this. Like, it's just not worth it for me to do it. Like, where we live, there's so many people that have lived here their whole lives. They can't even fathom living anywhere else. And it's like, since my wife and I have gotten married, gosh, I'm trying to think. We've lived in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 states. And we've been married almost 20 years. And I get kind of the itch to move like every 5 or 6 years. And we can't because of interest rates and the mortgage. And you say, well, Jones, what's that next step? Believe me, I've been looking. I've been planning and looking and so forth. It's just like, how do you reinvent yourself at the end of the world? Like, what happens if we go through and I try to start a business and it all flips? You know, I mean, it's such a weird deal. It's such a weird deal. This is one of those kind of things where, again, you know, we have to kind of come back around to God and really kind of put our trust and emphasis on Him. I was looking up scriptures talking about kind of getting unstuck. And Psalm 40:1-3 of the New Living Translation says, I waited patiently for the Lord to help me. And he turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the pit of despair, out of the mud and the mire. He set my feet on solid ground and steadied me as I walked along. He has given me a new song to sing, a hymn of praise to our God. And it popped away here, and it said, and many will see what he's done and be amazed. They will put trust in the Lord. And the thing is, there's a lot of inspirational verses for like that. I mean, you can Google like inspirational verses, you know, for God to get me out of the mire, to get me out of the stuck position. There's a bunch of them. I mean, look at Abraham. Whenever God told Abraham, he said, look, you're going to have a son, and then it just didn't come. Look at David, man. Well, it didn't come for a while. I mean, it eventually did, but he had to wait for a long time, right? And look at David. David was anointed king and then had to go back out to the sheep, you know, like go back out to the sheep. He had to run around from a crazy king and like hide in caves and all kinds of stuff. I mean, if you go through the Psalms and read them, there's a lot of Psalms in there about David crying his heart out, you know. Even Jesus, like when he was there, he said, God, if you'll take this cup from me, I'm paraphrasing all this. He said, do it, but if not, your will be done. Even on the cross, Father, why have you forsaken me? I mean, it's like the flesh cries out continually because the flesh does not want to experience any sort of discomfort or suffering. And yet the world that we live in now is such a world of suffering. To the point where everything has been turned to 11. It's just been maxed out across the board. And, I mean, if you just look around, I was just at the store earlier, and it hurts me so bad to go to the store anymore, because you just see people just in various states of just decay. Just decay. And I know it's always been like that. I mean, people get old. I mean, the Bible talks about it all the time. People like getting old, their eyes growing dim and all kinds of stuff. But the thing is, it's so sad to see people just hunched over in wheelchairs. And it's just like, man, when we read about the Great Commission, and we see that we're supposed to be able to lay hands on people, and they're supposed to be able to get up, they're supposed to be able to see. You know what I mean? It breaks me that we're unable to do that today. And in theory, you see on the internet, you hear stories about people doing it. And it's like, okay, then what am I missing? Why can't I contribute to that? What kind of a world are we living in like that? Now, I know that suffering in and of itself can certainly be a strong kind of leader, a strong guide to push and position people, where they need to be. I saw a thing the other day that said depression, which is obviously suffering, is basically your soul crying out and letting you know that you're not fulfilling your soul's purpose. And so it's a guide. It pushes you. It sucks to be depressed. But at the same token, it's the depression that can pull you closer towards your goal or your purpose or where you're supposed to be. So I wrote a song years ago called The Pain That Makes You. It's the years and the tears that define you, that liberate, motivate, and drive you. It's the pain that makes you, I think, is how that goes. It's been a long time since I've worked on that. But the point is that it's the pain that drives us. But it still kills me, because it's like if the healing and the reduction of suffering wasn't possible, I just don't feel like Jesus would have wasted his time with it. Like, I just don't think he would have even put emphasis on it. Now, I'm not trying to put words in his mouth. I'm not trying to say I know what he's thinking. But it just, if Jesus came to fulfill the law, as an example, because he says, I came to fulfill the law, and he came and ultimately ended up going through and healing a whole bunch of people and preaching and really trying to mold and shape their lives. I feel like he was giving us an example of kind of what's possible. Because he ultimately empowered the disciples to be able to go through and to do those things, the same kind of things, cast out demons and heal people. I don't know, man. I keep talking about on these podcasts this notion that we have this big event coming, right? And supposedly the prophets are saying that healing is coming. The prophets are saying that there's going to be a wealth transfer. We keep hearing, the 17th letter of the alphabet and some of these others, talking about there being great upheaval and great change. I don't know. So then the question then, how do you reinvent yourself at the end of the world? How do you reinvent yourself, whenever we have no earthly idea what's coming? Because I'm not one of those just sit around and wait for the popcorn kind of guys. And I know there's a lot of people that out there that are like me, and they can't sit still. They say patience is a virtue, and for me, it's just like, my gosh, I can't do anything with that. I was talking about Jack Canfield earlier, and I forgot I grabbed this post. But he said, successful people maintain a positive focus in life no matter what's going on around them. That's also kind of a Stoic principle as well. They stay focused on their past successes rather than their past failures, and on the next action steps they need to take to get them closer to the fulfillment of their goals, rather than all the other distractions that life presents to them. So, in other words, you need to be continually focused on your next project. I was out there this morning because, like I said, right now I'm currently working at the radio station, but I'm applying for jobs like crazy. So this morning I'd been working on my car over the weekend, just trying to get it fixed up. And I got stuck on a spot yesterday. I don't know if you can see my fingernails. I've got grease all over my fingernails. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much. You can take 8 showers if you've ever worked on a car. It's just like you can never get fully clean. And so I'm in there working on this thing this morning, and I'm just praying about it, and I'm like trying not to stress out about, like looking for the jobs and all these other kind of things. And I just heard him say, just focus on your current project. Just focus on what you're currently working on. Just don't worry. Let me handle it. Just focus on what you're currently working on. And it's so tempting to want to sit there and just continually sit and just beg God, be that quote unquote crystal ball. And I'm saying that obviously tongue in cheek. It's like we want God to be this vending machine for us and constantly bring us out of our suffering and constantly bring us to a place to where, we can find comfort. But God doesn't exist that way. You can see that all throughout Scripture. God seems to care very little about our comfort. Not to say that God doesn't want us to be happy. I think any parent, if you will, wants their kids to be happy. But at the same token, you want your kids to be the best versions of themselves. And in order to do that, sometimes they have to be uncomfortable. And sometimes they have to go through situations that they ultimately don't like in order to be able to become the best versions of themselves. Again, we see this explained over and over and over all throughout Scripture. And as a matter of fact, if you look in the apocryphal text like Jubilee and Jasher, if you've never read the book of Jubilees and the book of Jasher, just bare minimum, read the book of Jasher. Because first of all, the book of Jasher is mentioned like twice in the Old Testament, like by name. It's mentioned twice, which is crazy to me that then it's not included. If it's like, according to the book of Jasher, I forget how they bring it up, but it's like twice that they mention it. And I used to always drive me crazy when I'm reading through the Bible. I'm like, what is the book of Jasher? It's not in here. I mean, what are they talking about? But if you read the book of Jasher, you'll see some very interesting things. Like you get to see an entirely different side of Abraham. I don't know if you knew this, but Abraham also was thrown in the fire. You know Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but Abraham too was also thrown in the fiery furnace. Nimrod is actually the one that threw him in there. And it goes through that entire account. And then it also talks about Moses and how Moses kind of came to be. And Moses, it goes through his whole exile when he leaves after killing the guy in Egypt, where he leaves and when he comes back. And it just completely changes the entire. I mean, you get to see, Moses was a king for a while. Believe it or not, he was married as king. His father-in-law, I just can't remember. It's not Jethro like we see in the Bible. It's his father-in-law has a different name. It's completely wild when you go through it. And when you look at the plagues they expound upon them a lot, and it's a lot deeper than what you would think. It's a lot deeper. You also go through and see some really weird things in there. Well, one of these days, I'm going to do an entire episode just geared towards like the book of Jasher, the book of Jubilees. Gosh, man, there's tons of stuff in Enoch. Enoch is quoted directly in Jude. So, I mean, there's a lot of validity that is left. There's a lot of context, I think, in these non-canonized scripture that I think that really we owe it to ourselves to pay some attention to, because it provides, like I said, a lot of additional context that we don't otherwise get. And the whole notion, if you've ever heard of like the Cabbage Patch Kids or the Cabbage Patch Babies, they kind of allude to that in how in the book of Jasher as well. I mean, it's wild, man. I mean, the kind of around the time of Moses and what they were doing with the babies when the Israelites were enslaved in Egypt. It's pretty crazy. I'll do a show on that. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in that. But it's pretty interesting. All that to say this. All to say this to come back again to kind of where we start. It at this point with where we're at. And all of this, we're all sitting here waiting. We feel that something is off. We feel like we're just kind of drifting through life, because I see it all the time. I talk to people all the time that just feel like pointless. We all have the same things that we say. Well, how you doing? Oh, man, I'm better than I deserve. I'm blessed. Oh, I'm doing great. Yourself. Like, and people are just going through these motions with these like facades that we carry across. I wrote a song years ago called Hidden Behind the Smile, and it was just talking about that exact concept. It's like you feel dead inside, but you're just wearing this mask of this smile to let everybody else in the world think that you're doing all right. And I think everybody's doing that right now. More and more people are getting vocal with it on the internet. I mean, yeah, I mean, look at this podcast. I mean, look at the whole nature of this, because we're caught within such a weird spot right now. We're caught between this old life that we used to live, and we're working and moving towards a life that is supposedly going to be bigger and better. Again, this reality halfway house. Our realities are changing, because within a halfway house, you're free, right? But you're still kind of a property of the state. You still don't have all the privileges. You still don't have the ability to be able to go through and to just kind of do whatever you want. Your hands are still kind of tied. So how do you reinvent yourself within the halfway house? You know, you've got this record. You know, it's a very weird spot. And this is what I would say. And this is, you know, I'm one of those people that, you know, tries to put his money where his mouth is, and not tell anybody to do something that I wouldn't do myself. But I would say is this, and this comes from a lot of prayer and time I've spent with God. You know, you always hear people say you can't take it with you, right? Like your money, your things, you can't take it with you, right? Well, here's the thing. Let's say that this entire overlay, let's harken back to a few podcasts ago, where we talk about this being a simulation, which I actually think that there's probably some validity to. I really and truly do, probably more than what we even realize. I don't know in what capacity, but I think that we're probably closer to that framework. I heard somebody today say this body and all the symptomology and everything that we're experiencing is all coming from our mind, because the entire body itself is actually a hologram. I don't know. Again, I don't think any one of us know or can say definitively that that's essentially what it is. But I think what we can say is that we're all experiencing this life as we know it now. And if this is a simulation or a video game or fill in the blank, a matrix, you can't take any of this with you, right? Except, and in theory, you can take your experience with you, right? Because if you look over the course of your life, right? If you look over the course of your life, you can go through and you can move jobs, you can move countries, you can move, you know, locations, fill in the blank. You can get married, divorced, and the one thing that carries through with you is your experience. You could lose everything, but you'd still have all of those experiences up to this point. And I think that's the thing that we need to continue and hang on to. In this time where it seems like everything is meaningless, like Solomon said, you know, it's like every day, there's nothing new under the sun. Everything is meaningless, because it feels like that more and more every day. I think we need to focus on our experience. And if we still have breath in our lungs, and we still have time and availability, and we don't know what tomorrow brings. I mean, the event could go this afternoon. All the power could go out right now. And the new world could start. The next iteration could begin. But until that happens, we have to just keep proceeding. Because what did they say? The Bible says that they'll be eating and drinking and giving in marriage. In other words, it's just going to be another day in the life. So if we can't take any of this with us, the things, the crap, right? We can take our experience. And God said, well, and Jesus said in the parable of the talents, you know, when the master left, right, he entrusted the talents with the three different people. And, you know, if you know the story, you know that the guy with the 5 talents and the guy with the 2 or 3, I forget now, talents, he invested the talents, and those two individuals doubled their talents. They doubled their money. But the guy with the 1 talent didn't invest. He just kind of buried it up in a hole, and he got in trouble for it. He's like, yeah, I just didn't want to lose it. But the master was mad because he didn't invest those talents. He wasted it. So I would say this: it's easy to get overwhelmed with all of this. It's easy to get stuck in a job that you hate. It's easy to go through and to get stuck And like me, I'm like, oh, I can't move because of my mortgage. Like the interest rate. The interest rate's so low. It's like I'm thinking so narrow-mindedly and so materialistically. I've got to shake myself loose from that. I'm speaking to me as much as I'm speaking to you, right? We can't take the physical crap with us, but we can take the experiences. And if we go through and take the talents that God has given us and we bury it in a hole and we don't use that, then we're missing out on that experience. I had this thought, and I'll kind of end on this. And this is just a thought. This is just a thought. They say that, at the end of your life, you're going to have a life review, this judgment, and your life is going to be replayed. Right? That's what they say. Well, if this is a simulation, it makes sense. Like in Call of Duty, the video game, right? They literally record every moment of the game because they'll go through and take the best snippets of the game and replay them bullet by bullet, like frame by frame. So let's say that's happening with your life right now. Like this entire thing, this entire podcast, this entire is just, I could be watching it back in my life review. So here's the thought. What if your heaven, quote unquote, what if your heaven is you getting to go back and relive this life again, exactly as it happened? And you get to kind of walk around within it, but just like a video game, there are parameters. Like let's say I'm just making this up. This is just a thought that I had, but an entertaining thought that I somehow can't let go. I'm my next iteration, my quote unquote heaven, is that I'm stuck in this world, and let's say I'm living in Texas, and I can't go outside of my boundaries. I have to stay within, a few blocks of where I'm at, just like in a video game. And so if I didn't expand and I didn't go out and live the life, I didn't invest the talents, and I just doom scrolled all the time, then I can't venture too far from my couch because I'm only going through and being able to experience what I brought forward. In other words, your experiences are what you bring forward. Imagine if your experiences are what you get to then go back and replay. Your greatest hits are the only things you get to watch. I'm not saying that's it. I'm not saying that's gospel. It's just a thought that I had one time, and it's really given me pause because it's like, man, if I were to die today and I only got to go through and relive my quote-unquote greatest hits, what kind of an afterlife, what kind of a heaven would that be? I don't know. It's just something to think about. It's kind of depressing to think about, right? Because there's no Eiffel Towers in there for me, There's no climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. There's no, and so, and you can't compare yourself to other people. I totally get that. But it's food for thought because it makes you want to get out there and truly experience the gift of life that we have every single day. Because we don't know. The event could happen tomorrow. It can never happen in our lifetime at all. So it's just something to think about. Again, thank you so much for everybody tuning in. I appreciate all the comments and the DMs. I really do. I know this is a new podcast, and I'm just kind of getting it up and off the ground. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe. Again, like I said, my ultimate goal for this channel as it grows is really to be able to go through and get it into more of a kind of an interview-oriented podcast. I've, having worked in radio as long as I have, I love sitting down with people and really hashing out and discussing topics in long form conversations like this. I just love it. It's just been something I've always enjoyed. And I'm also interested in, like I said, going through and bringing in a co-host. I think that would be a lot of fun as well, to bring in someone to kind of bounce ideas and so forth. So if you dig the esoteric, if you dig kind of the idea of, or kind of the topics that we've discussed so far, let me know. Reach out if you're interested in maybe teaming up. realityhalfwayhouse@gmail.com. In the meantime, just remember, you can't take it. You can't take anything with you. No man is promised tomorrow. None of us are. So, get out there today and take advantage of all that the world has to offer. Because again, the event could happen this afternoon. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen next week. We just don't know. We are definitely caught between worlds. This is the Reality Halfway House.